How can a pizza order restart an 18-year-old love story? David Chen discovered the answer to this question at a moment he least expected. The wrong number he dialed would lead him to the right person and change everything. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor about timing. David had built a technology empire worth billions, could manage the world's most complex systems, but made a simple mistake dialing a pizza place. That small error would become the biggest opportunity of his life, because the wrong address turned out to be exactly the right one. Before we continue with this incredible story, could you please write in the comments which city you're watching from? We share new heart-healing stories every day. Now let's get back to this amazing tale. David Chen was 39 years old and controlled a technology empire that had revolutionized cloud computing and artificial intelligence. His company, Nexus Technologies, employed over 50,000 people across 4 continents and generated revenue that exceeded the GDP of small countries. Forbes consistently ranked him among the world's youngest billionaires, and his innovations had earned him recognition from presidents and prime ministers. But on this particular Friday evening in December, David Chen was simply a tired man who wanted to order pizza and watch a movie in his penthouse apartment overlooking San Francisco Bay. His assistant had left for the weekend, his executive chef was on vacation, and the elaborate smart home system that controlled every aspect of his luxury living space couldn't satisfy his craving for pepperoni pizza from his favorite neighborhood joint. David's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming tower in Soma, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city, the bay, and the bridges that connected San Francisco to the world beyond. The apartment was a showcase of cutting-edge technology integrated seamlessly with timeless design, voice-controlled everything, furniture that adjusted automatically to his preferences, and artwork that changed based on his mood and the time of day. Yet despite all these luxuries, David often felt isolated in his technological paradise. The smart home anticipated his every need except the one that mattered most: genuine human connection. His social calendar was full of networking events, board meetings, and charity galas, but these interactions felt scripted and transactional. People approached him as David Chen, the billionaire, rather than David the person, making authentic relationships nearly impossible to form. The irony wasn't lost on David that he had created technologies designed to connect people while becoming increasingly disconnected himself. His dating life consisted of carefully orchestrated encounters with accomplished women who looked perfect in photographs but shared little genuine chemistry with him. These relationships followed predictable patterns: initial fascination with his success, followed by frustration with his work schedule, ending in amicable separations that left both parties unchanged. David's therapist, Dr. Martinez, often asked him about the last time he had felt truly happy rather than merely successful. The answer always came back to the same period, his college years, when he was dating Sarah Mitchell and believing that love could conquer any obstacle. Those memories felt like they belonged to a different person, a younger version of himself, who hadn't yet learned that dreams could be expensive and that some prices were too high to pay. Sarah Mitchell had been David's first and deepest love, a relationship that had shaped his understanding of intimacy, partnership, and loss. They met during their sophomore year at Stanford, 2 ambitious students from different worlds who discovered they shared the same dreams about changing the world through technology and compassion. Sarah was studying computer science with a focus on educational software, driven by her belief that technology could democratize learning and provide opportunities for underprivileged children. David was pursuing a double major in computer science and business, already showing the entrepreneurial instincts that would eventually make him wealthy beyond imagination. Their shared passion for innovation created an intellectual bond that quickly deepened into romantic love. For 3 years, David and Sarah were inseparable. They studied together in the library until closing time, spent long nights coding side by side in the computer lab, and took weekend drives along the California coast, talking about the future they would build together. Sarah believed in David's vision of creating technology that would improve people's lives, while David was inspired by Sarah's commitment to using their innovations for social good rather than just financial gain. Their relationship was built on mutual respect, shared values, and a deep understanding of each other's ambitions and fears. Sarah came from a middle-class family in Sacramento. Her father was a high school math teacher, her mother worked as a nurse, and she understood the value of hard work and integrity. David's background was more complicated. His parents had immigrated from Taiwan when he was 5, building a successful restaurant business through 16-hour days and careful saving. The pressure to succeed was enormous for both of them, but they found strength in their partnership. When David struggled with the business courses that seemed to come naturally to his wealthier classmates, Sarah helped him understand the nuances of management and finance. When Sarah felt overwhelmed by the male-dominated tech culture, David supported her ideas and ensured her voice was heard in group projects and presentations. During their senior year, David and Sarah began planning their post-graduation life together. They would move to San Francisco, find jobs at established tech companies, to gain experience, and then launch their own startup focused on educational technology. David had even purchased an engagement ring, planning to propose after graduation when their future seemed more certain. But opportunity arrived in an unexpected form during the spring of their senior year. A venture capital firm had been following David's innovative work on cloud computing algorithms and offered him a position that would fast-track him into the highest levels of Silicon Valley's elite circle. The job came with a 7-figure salary, stock options that could be worth tens of millions, and access to resources that would accelerate his career by decades. The catch was timing and commitment. The firm needed David to start immediately, before graduation, and the position required complete dedication. 18-hour days, frequent travel, and total focus on building the next generation of enterprise software. There would be no time for outside relationships or personal commitments that might interfere with his professional development. David faced the most difficult decision of his young life. Accept the position and abandon his plans with Sarah, or turn down the opportunity and potentially never get another chance at this level of success. The venture capital partners made it clear that this was a now or never proposition. They had identified David as a once-in-a-generation talent, but they needed complete commitment to justify their investment. Sarah encouraged David to take the position, insisting that their love was strong enough to survive the temporary separation and demanding schedule. She would finish her degree, find work in San Francisco, and wait for David's situation to stabilize. They could postpone their plans by a year or two while David established himself in his new role. But David understood the tech industry better than Sarah realized. He had seen other brilliant people get consumed by the venture capital machine, working themselves into isolation while chasing increasingly distant goals. The position being offered wasn't temporary. It was a lifestyle that would define every aspect of his existence for years to come. The night before David had to give his answer, he and Sarah sat on the roof of their dormitory, looking out at the campus where they had fallen in love. Sarah wore the blue sweater that David loved because it matched her eyes, and she spoke with the optimism that had always made him believe anything was possible. She painted a picture of their future that sounded like paradise, David succeeding beyond his wildest dreams, while she created educational software that would help millions of children. They would be partners in every sense, supporting each other's ambitions while building a life based on love and shared purpose. David wanted desperately to believe in Sarah's vision, but he could see the practical obstacles she was choosing to ignore. The venture capital world was notoriously demanding and unforgiving. Relationships that couldn't adapt to its rhythms simply didn't survive. He had watched other promising couples torn apart by the pressures of startup culture and knew that good intentions weren't enough to overcome systemic challenges. When David finally told Sarah he was taking the position, he tried to explain his reasoning in terms she might understand. This wasn't just about money or personal ambition. It was about building the foundation for everything they had dreamed of together. If he succeeded, he would eventually have the resources and influence to support Sarah's educational technology projects on a scale they had never imagined. Sarah listened to David's explanation with growing sadness, recognizing the rationalization for what it was. She told him she understood his decision but couldn't pretend it didn't feel like abandonment. If he truly believed their relationship was strong enough to survive, he would find a way to make it work. His choice to prioritize career over love suggested that perhaps he had never valued their partnership as much as she had. David's career trajectory over the following 18 years exceeded every prediction the venture capitalists had made. He worked for 3 different firms, learning every aspect of enterprise software development and business strategy before launching Nexus Technologies with backing from the same partners who had first recruited him from Stanford. The company's growth was meteoric. David's innovations in cloud computing and artificial intelligence positioned Nexus at the forefront of the digital transformation that was reshaping global commerce. Major corporations relied on his platforms to manage their data, connect with customers, and optimize their operations. Governments licensed his security protocols to protect sensitive information. With success came wealth beyond anything David had imagined as a college student. His personal net worth grew into the billions, providing him with luxuries and experiences that most people could only dream about. He owned homes on 3 continents, traveled in private jets, and had access to exclusive social circles where business and politics intersected. But material success couldn't fill the emotional void that Sarah's absence had created. David dated accomplished women, other entrepreneurs, executives, celebrities, and socialites. But none of these relationships progressed beyond surface-level compatibility. The deeper connection he had shared with Sarah proved impossible to replicate, partly because David himself had changed in ways that made authentic intimacy more difficult. The business world had taught David to view relationships through the lens of strategic advantage. He analyzed potential partners the way he evaluated investment opportunities, looking for mutual benefit and compatible objectives, rather than the intangible chemistry that made love transformative. This approach worked well in professional contexts, but left his personal life feeling hollow and transactional. David often wondered what had become of Sarah, but pride prevented him from actively seeking information about her life. He told himself that she had probably found someone who could appreciate her in ways he hadn't, built the kind of stable relationship he had been too ambitious to provide. The thought of Sarah's happiness with another man was both comforting and devastating. He wanted her to be fulfilled, but he couldn't escape the selfish wish that she might still think of him occasionally. Technology provided David with the tools to find anyone in the world within minutes, but he resisted the temptation to search for Sarah's name or investigate her current circumstances. Some doors, once closed, were better left unopened. The life he had built was successful by every measurable standard, and dwelling on alternate possibilities would only undermine his achievements. On this particular December evening, David found himself alone in his penthouse after a week of intense negotiations with potential acquisition targets in Europe. The jet lag was making him too tired to go out, but he was too restless to sleep. His usual solution to this state of mind was ordering pizza from Gino's, a family-owned restaurant that had been serving the neighborhood since before the tech boom transformed San Francisco. David had discovered Gino's during his first year working in the city, when he was living in a modest apartment and trying to establish himself in the competitive venture capital world. The pizza reminded him of simpler times, and the family who ran the restaurant treated him with the same warmth, whether he was ordering as a struggling employee or a successful entrepreneur. As David scrolled through his phone looking for Gino's contact information, he realized he had deleted the number during a recent phone cleanup. He decided to call directory assistance, but the automated system was difficult to navigate and kept asking him to repeat the restaurant's name. Frustrated and hungry, David tried to dial what he remembered as Gino's number, relying on muscle memory from years of regular orders. The phone rang 4 times before a familiar voice answered with a simple, "Hello?" The voice was warmer and more mature than David remembered, but there was no mistaking its distinctive cadence and gentle tone. After 18 years of separation, he was hearing Sarah Mitchell's voice again. David's first instinct was to hang up, but shock kept him frozen with the phone pressed against his ear. Sarah repeated her greeting, this time with a note of concern, as if she sensed something unusual about the silence on the other end of the line. "I think I have the wrong number," David finally managed to say, his voice barely steady. "I was trying to order pizza." Sarah laughed. a sound that transported David back to their college years with startling immediacy. "Well, I don't deliver pizza, but I was just about to order some myself. Maybe we have the same taste in dinner plans." The conversation that followed was surreal in its ordinariness. Sarah assumed she was talking to a stranger who had misdialed, and David found himself reluctant to correct her mistake. For the first time in years, someone was talking to him without knowing his net worth, his company, or his reputation. Sarah's voice carried the same kindness and intelligence that had captivated him decades earlier. As their conversation continued, David learned that Sarah was living alone in a modest apartment in the Mission District, ironically just a few miles from his penthouse tower. She worked as a software developer for a nonprofit organization that created educational programs for underserved communities, exactly the kind of work she had dreamed about in college. Sarah mentioned that she had ordered pizza from a nearby restaurant but had ordered too much food for one person. In a moment of spontaneous generosity, she invited David to join her for dinner, suggesting they could split the cost and enjoy some company on a Friday evening. David knew he should reveal his identity and politely decline the invitation. Accepting would mean deceiving Sarah about who he was, creating complications that could only lead to hurt feelings and awkward revelations. But the prospect of spending time with her, even under false pretenses, was too tempting to resist. "I'd love to share pizza with you," David heard himself saying, "but I should probably contribute more than half the cost since I'm crashing your dinner plans." Sarah gave him her address and suggested he arrive in about 30 minutes when the pizza was scheduled to be delivered. David spent those 30 minutes in a state of nervous excitement he hadn't experienced since college. He changed clothes 3 times, settling on jeans and a casual button-down shirt that wouldn't immediately identify him as someone with enormous wealth. David's hands were shaking as he knocked on the door of Sarah's apartment. When it opened, he saw the woman he had loved and lost, 18 years older, but still radiantly beautiful. Sarah's hair was shorter now, framing her face in soft waves, and laugh lines around her eyes suggested a life filled with joy despite whatever challenges she had faced. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Recognition dawned in Sarah's eyes, followed by surprise, confusion, and something that might have been pleasure. David waited for anger or accusations, but Sarah simply stepped aside and invited him into her home. "David Chen," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I should have recognized your voice, but I suppose I wasn't expecting to hear from you after 18 years. David entered Sarah's apartment, taking in the modest but comfortable living space that reflected her personality perfectly. Books filled every available shelf, plants thrived in sunny windows, and artwork created by what appeared to be her students covered one wall. The contrast with his own sterile luxury was striking and somehow comforting. Sarah handled David's unexpected appearance with the same grace she had shown in college when facing difficult situations. She didn't demand explanations or express hurt about their past separation. Instead, she invited him to sit down and asked if he wanted something to drink while they waited for the pizza to arrive. The conversation that followed was cautious at first, as both of them navigated the strange circumstances of their reunion. David learned that Sarah had indeed moved to San Francisco after graduation, as they had originally planned. She had worked for several tech companies before finding her calling in educational nonprofit work, developing software that helped teachers create personalized learning experiences for students with different abilities and backgrounds. Sarah asked about David's career with polite interest, but without the awe or calculation he usually encountered when people learned about his success. She seemed genuinely pleased that he had achieved his professional goals, but her focus remained on the impact of his work rather than its financial rewards. As the evening progressed, David and Sarah began to relax into the comfortable rapport they had shared in college. They discussed books they had read, places they had traveled, and changes they had observed in San Francisco over the past 2 decades. The easy conversation reminded David of why he had fallen in love with Sarah's mind as much as her heart. When the pizza finally arrived, they ate, sitting on Sarah's couch, sharing stories about their work and laughing about memories from their college years. David found himself talking about aspects of his life he rarely discussed with anyone. The loneliness that success had brought, the difficulty of forming genuine relationships, and his growing sense that professional achievement wasn't the same thing as personal fulfillment. Sarah listened without judgment, occasionally asking thoughtful questions that helped David articulate feelings he had been carrying for years. She shared her own struggles, the challenges of working in underfunded nonprofit organizations, the difficulty of creating lasting change in educational systems, and her own occasional loneliness as someone who had chosen meaningful work over financial security. As the evening drew to a close, David faced a decision that would determine whether this chance encounter became a single evening of nostalgia or the beginning of something new. He could thank Sarah for the pizza, leave her apartment, and return to his separate life with pleasant memories of their reunion. Or he could find the courage to admit that seeing her again had reminded him of what he had been missing for 18 years. "Sarah," David said as he prepared to leave, "I need to tell you something. Tonight has been the most genuine conversation I've had in years. I forgot how it felt to talk to someone who really listened, who asked questions because she cared about the answers rather than because she was looking for opportunities." Sarah studied his face with the same perceptive gaze he remembered from college. "What are you asking me, David?" "I'm asking if you'd be willing to have dinner with me again. Not because of who I've become or what I've achieved, but because of who we used to be to each other and who we might still be now." The question hung in the air between them, carrying the weight of 18 years of separation and the possibility of reconnection. Sarah's answer would determine whether David's wrong number had led him to the right place after all. Sometimes the universe conspires to give us exactly what we need at exactly the right moment. Can love find its way back after 18 years of separation? Tomorrow, we'll share another story that proves timing might be everything when it comes to second chances. Let us know in the comments what you think Sarah's answer should be. The heart often knows what the mind takes years to understand.